Good evening, everybody. I would like to call this Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024 regular council meeting to order. It is now 5 o'clock or 1700 hours. First off, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded ancestral territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples and the Splatseen of the Secwepemc Nation. Just to remind everybody that's in our audience tonight that this meeting is being broadcast and recorded on the City of Armstrong's YouTube channel. Looking to get a motion to adopt the minutes that the April 2nd, 2024 agenda for the regular council meeting be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councilor Drapla, second Councilor Todd. Any questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none. Call the vote. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And that the March 11th, 2024 minutes of the City of Armstrong's regular council meeting be adopted as written. Any errors or omissions in that document? No. Mover? Councilor Nietzsche, seconder Councilor Wayner. All those in favor? And that is also carried. Off the bat, I guess we get to hear from Patty Noonan on the Armstrong Spalancing Chamber of Commerce executive presentation.
There we go. First of all, I just wanted to take a minute and introduce you to Kim McGarvey, who's with me today. Kim is our second vice president. And so I'm really happy that Kim's here. Some of you might recognize Mike, who's with Rhythm Productions. They're a team, so you know he likes to come out too. So I believe that you have received from us two reports. One was our visitor services for 2023 from January to December. You're all very well, you all do very well at reading. So I'm assuming you don't need me to go through this month by month and stat by stat. But if you have any questions at all about the stats, I'm happy to answer them. The stats continue to grow. When 2020 hit, everything kind of took a hit and our stats did as well. We managed to stay a bit above the water because we transferred a bit to online help, and that kept our stats going for a little bit. But every year now it's getting a little higher. Yeah, so we're really happy with that. We continued our digital support once COVID was over, just because people had gotten used to it. So we spend about 5 hours a day on online support. So that's people asking questions about events, if it's people sending us an email looking for packages, all sorts of things, just answering questions generally. And then our office hours are 10 until 3 right now. And so we see a lot of people that come in during the day, Monday to Friday. There's a huge influx of cyclists already, which is really nice to see, early spring. So that's good. So if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine.
I just
Councillor
wonder what's the mobile parties or mobile?
So
visitors?
mobile services is, for instance, music in the park. We have our summer students there. If we're doing the twilight markets, if we have been to the car show that's on Main Street, anything that we don't provide online or from our brick and mortar. So you'll see more and more of those as time goes by. We're hoping that the government will fund our Canada Summer Jobs project, and we'll have some mobile pop-ups this summer, hopefully at O'Keefe Ranch and Caravan, some of those places.
Great. I just want to congratulate you in advance on the other half of your report because it looks great.
Oh, thank you. If I could add one thing to this report, one of the things we're really proud about and that we get a lot of kudos from, and they don't really belong to us, is that tiny RV park that we have. We get so many people that come in. It's clean. The hosts are lovely. They you know, sometimes we think we're going to get some complaints because it's beside the railway tracks. But most people say that after a night or two, they don't really notice it, but they love that they can park, they can go to the park, they can go swimming, they can walk to town. So we're really thankful for that because people would tend to move on to another town that's got a campground or one of the provincial sites. So we're really thankful for that. And the Kin Club should really get some kudos for how well they keep it.
I know, there's already somebody camping there. So, yeah, it is a
Yes.
great little park.
One of our most asked questions off season is if they're open during the winter months. And we say, no, not at this time, maybe in the future. So then
Councilor Wayner, sorry.
oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
Sorry, I just had a question about the alternatives type of support. The social media, is that like a number of posts or is that hours or how, what is
The
that?
social media is how many requests.
Oh, okay.
So it might be, we've answered things on the community forum, we answer them on Instagram. Other people with businesses in the tourism sector will tag us and then we answer those questions. So those are, social media is strictly social media. Alternatives are things like if we've provided a package, a mail-in package, we still do get people that phone or send us a letter, believe it or not, that say, we're planning a holiday, can you send us a package? Because there's no brick and mortar in Vernon anymore, or in Salmon Arm or Kamloops, we get a lot of people, especially seniors, or people without a mailbox that will ask us for packages. And there's a lot of people that don't go online either. They don't want to use their data to download guides. That takes quite a bit. And I don't know about you, but I'm not great at reading a guide on my phone. It's too tiny. So most of the alternate requests are for things like guides. We also do, another example of alternates would be things like the car club, 4-H people that need bag stuffers. So they're having an event, they need information to pass on to people who are attending. And we put together maps and brochures and lists of things to do.
Thank you. That
You're
was
welcome.
very thorough. Thanks. Excellent. Thanks.
The red light throws me off. I keep thinking that means stop. So if there's no other questions on I almost said victim services. That's really bad. That tells you what my other half of my life has been, visitor services. So thanks for letting me present that. And then the other part is the shop local. And this was the first year that we actually tracked, made an effort to track how much was spent downtown, both during light up and then in the holiday season. We haven't done that before. As I told my board, it was quite resource intensive for us to do that. I'm really thankful that we have some great volunteers and team members who went through every receipt that was submitted to log where it came from, the time, the date. I think they spent 3 or 4 days at home in the evening watching that when they were watching TV, they said. So, but we don't have an electronic means of doing that. We don't see the value of getting an app yet, so maybe we will. But so this was for the shop local from November 24th to January 7th. It did miss a few of the earlier activities. I think Melodia had a concert at the beginning of November that we wouldn't have tracked. And Caravan had a couple of shows after January 7th that we wouldn't have gotten, but we provided $1,750 in chamber bucks and we had 3 winners. We had one that was strictly for people who shopped at Light Up, and then the others were for people who shopped the remainder of time. And to date, all of those chamber bucks have been spent in the community and the businesses have been reimbursed. So on top of the money that was spent, the businesses also got further funds because we did the chamber bucks. And there's been discussion about, instead of chamber bucks, using a Visa card or something, but that can be used anywhere. Nobody in another town is going to take our chamber bucks. So that was smart for us. In here, we've listed the top 3 spend days. I thought December 24th would maybe be a higher shop day because I think a lot of men shop that day, but maybe you all did your shopping early. And the checks, government checks came out early. So people that were on a pension or on any kind of government assistance got their checks early. And that's why December 21st was higher this year than we would normally expect. Sorry, I'm just going back to here. Total spent in the downtown area during light up was $3,750. And I didn't think that that was very high, but then if we looked at how many people didn't bother to turn their receipts in, maybe they just went and got a burger or they just went and got a coffee and didn't want to wait to submit their receipts. During the promotion, based on the minimum spend of $50 per entry and 581 entries, there was $29,050 spent in our community over that time. That's everything from retail to buying tickets for Asparagus Theater or Caravan. We took everything into consideration. The top spend locations were Askew's, Armstrong Flower and Gift, Armstrong Cider, including their market, Field Notes, Monashee Outdoors, PV Boulevard, Wild Oak, Armstrong Pharmacy, Red Apple, and then 10 was a combination of special events, Melodia, Asparagus Theater, and Caravan. And the top 5 out-of-town shoppers were Vernon, Kamloops, Kelowna, Salmon Arm, and Enderby. So that's not unexpected. We expected we weren't going to be drawing people from Vancouver. So, and then further on, we've made some notes. We actually talked to the BC Economic Development Association and asked them if they could help us with a formula to determine how much, once it was spent here, what it actually recirculated to be. And the formula they gave us is for every $100 spent with one of our local businesses, $63 is recirculated back into our economy. And it really makes a difference if you're in a small rural community. It tends to be a lot more is spent at the smaller retailers rather than the chain stores. And we want to remind everybody that this is really important because $18,301 was recirculated, and that could have been a business sponsoring lacrosse. They might have sponsored the kids' hockey tournament or sponsored opening night for the museum. All that money comes back into the community, so it's really important for us to keep it here. And I think that's about it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them. You're all so easygoing.
Just a quick one. When you say that $3,750 was from the light up, is that the light up when you start at 4 o'clock, like just in the evening, or is that all day long?
No, that was just from 4 till, yeah, just that time period.
Seeing nothing further, just want to thank you very much, Patty, and all of your staff for your hard work and dedication to our community. When we hear things like this, it shows that your hard work is going, getting stretched very, very far.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank council for their support as well. It was challenging during COVID and we're finally like going up the hill. We're really excited about the big festival that's this weekend. And you all know what it is. You can say cheese, right? We have people for the dinner that have bought tickets from Logan Lake. And we have a group of people coming from the Kootenays that have a similar event there that are coming up on Friday and staying the night to see our event. They're staying in our town. So that makes us really happy. And we will be doing a bit of a shop local for the cheese event when people go in to Hassan and have finished at the event. There will be a finds and flavors brochure that will list some other things they can do in town, some of the restaurants, the cafes, Twisted Pearl, the specialty shops, and each of them will have a $5 chamber buck in it. So then once those have all been collected, we'll be able to see how many people went into town after they were at the cheese. So hopefully we'll see you all. Reminder, you're all invited on Friday night. I just need an RSVP by an email, please, so we can add you to the list and you can have a name tag and you can have refreshments. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hand it over to Ms. Lowe for our departmental update report.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll start off with, I see I made a spelling mistake there on Philippa Harding for Corporate Services. Philippa.
Yes, Dawn has been recreating my name. Good evening, everyone. So this month has sort of been a very much a head down, lots of get stuff done, but not a lot to really put in my monthly update. We did launch our mass notification system, which was a bit of an endeavor. So we've got people signing up for that, as you know. So we are up to over 50 now. That does include the council members that have signed up, and there's a couple of staff, but a little more each day I look, which is awesome. And we're going to start running a contest for that as well. So any resident that has signed up, so anyone that's not either council or staff, we are going to do a draw, and we purchased a few of the chamber bucks, and that will be the prize. So after a certain amount of time, we'll draw that. So that'll hopefully get a few more people signed up. And we've done an update on the website. So it is now all ready for the company that looks after sort of the back end to start really adjusting and shifting things around for us. So it'll be more user friendly. So we're really launching into that now. Went through and sort of have copies of everything so we don't lose any of the data that's there. And also attended the education for Indigenous awareness. Did a few of those sessions as well, which was fantastic for me, for sure. I'm already been through and changing things on some of my documents and getting those a little more up to par.
Any questions for Philippa? No? Thank you, Philippa. A lot of Philippa's work is done through Corporate Services as just an administrative. And so it's the bigger projects that she does report out to you, but daily she's very busy. Yeah. Okay. So Janine Felker with the finance update. Thank you.
I'm also very busy. Just a few kind of things we're working on in finance. So the auditors are here today and the rest of this week auditing our financial statements for 2023. Those will be presented to council in May. I've attached the 2023 cemetery report for council's information. Again, that was shared with me for our year end, and the surplus of 26,000 will be coming back to us, and we put that back into our cemetery reserve fund for future capital expenditures or deficits that come up. Another thing that, oh, is there a question on the cemetery? No, sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Another thing I've been working on is the tax pre-authorized payment plan. It's kind of been a stickle in my side since I've started, and I just haven't really got there. But so currently it's governed by bylaw 1700. After review, it was determined that neither the bylaw or a policy is required, and it really can just be a tool of administration. So it makes it a lot more friendly to use. So I just wanted to bring this forward to council now, because at your May 13th meeting, I'll be bringing forward the current bylaw for repeal. And then staff will be updating all the forms and calculations for the tax notices that go out just actually 2 days after that meeting, or that week of that meeting, hopefully. So the new program will see that payments will be made 11 months of the year rather than 10. We hear a lot of, I've heard a lot of complaints that it leaves a payment plus the change in your taxes. So this way, if it's 11 payments, it will be the only thing you'll owe on tax due date is just the change in the tax rates and the change in your assessment, not a payment plus that. So that was one of the big things. The other thing is that interest will no longer be paid on the amounts collected. This aligns it up with the utility pre-authorized payment plan as well. And saves the city quite a bit of money. I looked at this number as of today for 2024, we've already paid almost $8,000 in interest to people. So it's a good savings for the taxpayers as well. And that's my update.
I was just curious in the event of overpayment or if the tax base or mill rate changes and then is actually ahead of the game after 11 months. Do we have the ability to return that money quickly, or what happens in that scenario?
Yeah, so the taxpayer can request a refund of the amount, and then on overpayment of taxes, we actually owe the interest on the overpayment of taxes. So that's where the interest would be paid. But yeah, we have a simple form that just gets filled out. Either we even accept through email, and the clerks just go back and forth, and then we refund the overpayment back to them.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question for Janine. Janine, just going back to the auditors from BDO that are coming to do their audit here on the 2nd and the 5th. How is the Parks and Recreation Commission audited as part of that area? Is it part of our process, or how is it? How are those financials audited and reported back?
So they're audited under CanLan because CanLan does all of the day-to-day financial transactions. So they're audited under the scope of CanLan. We just receive the year-end report from them, and that's what we include into our financial statements.
Okay, so we do receive an audited report from CanLan at the year end that shows their financial statement, revenues, expenses, et cetera.
Yeah, it's not necessarily, it's not audited because it is such a small segment of, like, CanLan as a corporation is audited, right? But we're just such a small segment in that. The information at some point in time is audited, but like the statement that I get from CanLan is just the excerpt, but we get, revenues, expenses. The surplus comes back to us if there's a surplus.
So there isn't necessarily a process to do internal auditing of the commission function as itself as it exists currently.
Correct.
Okay,
No,
thanks.
there's nothing.
Hi, Janine.
Hi.
So Janine, are you expecting residents to ask the city? I mean, it's easy enough to do, you divide by 11 instead of 10, but it's a different amount for people that would be paying monthly because they're actually gonna be paying an extra payment. I know for me, it all washes out. I'm not concerned about that, but do you think people are gonna be concerned about having a different amount that they're gonna pay?
So currently the bylaw actually divides it by 11, but then we only collect 10 payments. So the amount is actually going to go down for the 11 because we're actually going to be withdrawing for the whole 11 months. So
You don't expect people to be getting in touch with you asking you for that new amount?
I don't think so, because it does get automatically calculated and adjusted with every tax notice, right? You get your new form filled out. It has the math all done for you, and you can select that amount or you can select an amount.
I don't think I normally do that. Somebody does it for me.
Yeah. There you
And
go.
the other thing is, $8,000 less interest, that must mean I'm going to be short like $1 or $2. Are you expecting people to be concerned about $1 or $2?
I hope not. I mean,
Perfect.
and we can be confident in our rationale behind it that, I mean, we stopped it with the utility payment plan a couple of years ago and we
Yeah.
never really, we didn't hear anything from that.
That's great. And
Yeah.
because it is good for the city to be able to, it is good to have that program where people can pay every month and not have that big payment in the summer when they want to go on holidays. So we don't want to
Exactly.
deter people from not paying just so they put that money in their savings account and earn $2.
Well, right, you're not really earning much at your own bank account
No.
in interest if you are doing it yourself. So no, it's
The lowest
definitely a
monthly
great
balance,
tool
so-
that we can just withdraw the money for them if they choose. And
Okay, that's good.
Mr. Smith with Community Services and Emergency Program updates.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Under Community Services, as you may be aware, we did apply for and were successful in receiving funding for the Zero Vision Grant. We actually received more than what we asked for, which is a surprise, fantastic, but We have provided you past briefings, but we've now got a little bit more details about the specifics of what we will be able to do with this funding. Originally, we had applied for some digital display boards. They came back to us and said, hey, would you be interested in doing something else? And we said yes. So we did do some work. We did some walkabouts with one of their traffic engineers through Interior Health, and he's put forward some recommendations for both two intersections, so specifically Rosedale Avenue and Okanagan Street, and as well as also Pleasant Valley Road and Rosedale Avenue. So the recommendations that they are looking at for those two spaces is increasing pavement markings, which will actually give some narrowing to the roadway and to those intersections. Will actually visually cause people to think they need to slow down, is what we were trying to achieve. We'll also be putting out some delineators and then some curb barriers. So really, this is an opportunity to look at those long-term opportunities for us through some additional funding that we may be able to acquire in the future. But this does continue to check the boxes of what we had originally looked at with the traffic safety management plan that we did a year and a half ago. So we continue to move things forward. These were two of the 5 intersections that were identified as being problematic in our community. So this will be a great opportunity to continue to work with their staff and the resources that they're going to provide to us, and hopefully make those differences that will improve the safety for pedestrian traffic and as well as also for drivers within those 2 intersections. We were contacted by WorkSafe BC. They came and did an impromptu inspection. Nothing to be concerned about. They did write us an order, and that's just based on, we did end up on having to do, and we did look at doing an entry into one of our lift stations. This is not a common practice in speaking with our staff, and it was even identified originally when we set up our confined space program that this is not a space we would ever go into. All of the equipment is able to be lifted out of it and pulled out. But what ended up on happening was one of the components broke, physically fell and damaged a lever. So staff ended up on having to go into that space because we didn't have a write-up for it. They came back to us and said, we'd like you to have some permanent hazard assessments put in place and how we're going to perform the work. So we're in the process right now of finalizing those. So it's just a little bit of an administrative process that we need to go through with WorkSafe BC. And other than that, they were very satisfied with the program that we have. And I've been glad to see that we've been following up on our training with our staff and that all of our sites are being managed effectively. So that was a good outcome. It's not anything to be concerned about. We did receive the provincial funding for Indigenous engagement, amount of $40,000. So we have been in talk with our other regional local governments. There has been some positive feedback from a couple of our other communities. They're looking and wanting to partner with us on doing further Indigenous engagement over the next year and a half with that funding that we've received. So those opportunities will be discussed in the coming weeks, and hopefully by the time we have, probably within about 2 meetings, we're hopefully going to have a firm direction of what we will be doing with those funds. But there's been very positive discussions going on the emergency management level of those discussions. And then
Warren, Mr. Smith? Warren?
yes, Councillor Fowler.
So are these other communities, I know we've talked about it at the regional district, but are other communities that are interested in getting together as a group to do more Indigenous training? Have they done the level that Armstrong did a couple of weeks ago, or will they do that before we get together and do more?
Yeah, so some communities have, and that's why we didn't see some of the representation from some of the other communities at the table when we did host those 2 sessions. Back a month ago, I guess now, but a number of them are still interested in proceeding forward with either doing similar training or building on top of the existing training that we did provide. And lastly, just a little bit of an overview. I was hoping to get the numbers out as of the April 1st, but I think just because of the holiday, we didn't get an update. But as of March 22nd, the snowpack at Silver Star is sitting at 85%, and out at Hunter's Range, Enderby, it's sitting at 98%. So we're anticipating there may be a slight positive change to those actual numbers, because Silver Star, for example, did see 15 centimeters of snow build up over, hard to believe after the weekend that we had, but they did receive 15 centimeters of snow at the beginning of last week. So we're still going to continue to see some of that snowpack increase, hopefully over the next couple of weeks. And then we anticipate Frechette should be kicking in. At this time, I would say probably up to about 95% of the valley bottom snow up to 1,000-meter level has been burnt off. So there isn't any really concern with any valley bottom flooding potentially occurring because of high temperatures or large amount of precipitation. It would be those higher level snow levels that we're going to have to now start watching for the amount of time that it takes to burn that off, which is usually between now and mid to late June.
Just backing up a little bit, a question. Are we getting the Black Cat system? Are we scheduled for it this year, or is it up and running? Are we able to know when we're getting it?
So I'll give you a little bit of an overview on all of our radar and tracking systems that we use. So currently the Black Cat radar system is up and running, and it's on a undisclosed, no, it's not on a disclosed, it's on Pleasant Valley Boulevard actually. And we're using it just to get a better idea of what our traffic flows are within our downtown core. So it's presently out there, and it's been running for just under a week now. We'll run it for another week and a half, and then we've got to charge the batteries, and we'll either select the same location or move it to another location depending on the numbers that we see, if we're satisfied with them or not. Our digital display board that was up in front of PVSS has been moved onto Otter Lake Road. There was a request for some enforcement to be applied to that section of our community. So the digital display board's been placed there. The RCMP are aware, so they can actually be a little bit more effective in their enforcement and reminding individuals that they need to slow down. And then our trailered unit is going into circulation that we share with the city of Enderby and the township of Spalding. And so it will be deployed for a 3-week period 3 times over the summer, or between now and the end of September.
I still just have my concerns about in front of the Memorial Park in Hassan, and that it's like a raceway going through there, it really is. And I mean, we can ask for some more enforcement or something, but I think just that visual reminder might be enough to start slowing people down.
So I did acknowledge Councillor Nitschy's request 2 meetings ago and did go out and look at that site. We have some difficulties in placement, just with the localities of placing a pole within a parking area, and then availability of placement of the unit. So we have had some discussions with BC Hydro. They are not favorable to allowing us to post or place our units up on their poles, but there has been some discussions with Public Works to try and resolve that situation to find placement to post it. Okay.
Okay, so Brad is away today. He's at a conference for risk management. So I can go through his update. He's got displayed for you the water consumptions for February 2023 and 2024. We did not need to use our wells at all this year as we did last year, but it looks like we do have a little bit more water consumption, probably just because people are cleaning up earlier because we have a earlier spring. I don't know, it's February though. Yeah, I'm not sure what the reasoning is for that, so.
It's probably 20%.
Mm-hmm. He didn't tell me the reasoning for that, but we can get him to update that next council meeting. So he conducted a field visit with Provincial Hydrology Program staff on Friday, March the 15th to review the potential monitoring sites for Fortune Creek. They discussed the steps that the city's taking to address the drought conditions. The province is really taking note of this drought that we are in right now and what we may be facing this year and really looking for municipalities to step up and help conserve water. So you'll see bylaws coming forward, water restrictions changing. We're doing everything we can do to help the community, help ourselves to conserve water through this summer. We did a facility tour with council and a project engineer for our wastewater treatment facilities at Thomas Hayes and Adair site on March 19th. That was very well received by council. It's nice to get out there and if we're looking at changes or updates, it's nice for council to know exactly what we're talking about when we're referring to the structures and the facilities. We awarded our line painting services and the contract sweeping work. It's currently scheduled for April. I don't have a date.
Can you advise us who the street sweeping contractor is? You know?
No,
And
I don't have that in front of me right now, but I do know who it
if they're
is.
not coming back, just let us know who the contractor is.
Sure. Yeah, will do. The line painting is the line painting that we always use. I know that because we only had one submission, so. The landscaping for the City Hall, the RFP went out. It will close on April 16th and be awarded by the end of April and hopefully finished by the end of June. So that's exciting for us. Commercially inspected fleet vehicles have been retrofitted to comply with the new provincial requirements for body up alarm kits. They've also adjusted the speed parameters to 105 on foot and cruise control. So the vehicles can't go faster than that.
Worship, if I could, Don, just going back to the RFP for the landscaping, where do we post that? Is that on Bid BC or is
Yeah.
that on
BC
City
Bid.
Info or is it BC Bid? or-
BC bid.
BC Bid, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a stupid question, but what's a body up alarm kit?
I'm not 100% sure. Warren, do you know exactly what it is? Body up alarm? Is it backup alarm? Okay. Okay, that makes more sense than body. It's not a body cam. Okay, thank you for that correction. So, and we've also initiated the open excavation repairs on category 4 and 5 defects for sanitary manholes. So that was really quick. So we received all of our modeling and determined that there were some really important areas in town that we needed to fix right away. And most of those were manholes that had settled, so the pipes weren't even actually lined up to the manholes anymore. And so we started that right away. And some of the manholes are in people's yards, unfortunately. But we're cleaning up the best we can and reestablishing all that. So that is really good for our actual infrastructure and our asset management. So starting that so quickly after we just finished the modeling is really good. It's nice that we have a good spring to start all that. Crews are nearing completion of the flushing and cleaning of the storm lines in town. And are we going to show an example? I know Brad's not here, but let's have an example. This is inside the pipes. It doesn't have the description on there. Hey? Yeah. So you'll recall that last year we decided that instead of sinking more money into our sweeper trucks, because we had already put a lot of maintenance into the sweeping truck and it was worth some money, we decided to trade it in and go with contracted services. Our contracted services actually came in a lot less expensive than how much it costs for us to maintain and run a sweeper truck. But with the money that we received from that, we bought a new vac truck. And the vac truck is really cleaning up all of our infrastructure and giving us extra life on our infrastructure because they weren't being maintained in a way that gave us any extra life. They were blocking and exploding and having to be replaced. So this is a really good program, and unfortunately Brad's not here to brag about it, but those are just some of the things that we're pulling out of pipes. So it's proved to be very beneficial. Yeah, and proactive. CN Rail. Okay, so we did meet with CN Rail on March 21st to continue the dialogue with the rail trail connections with our carry program and ongoing dialogue and relationship building between the organizations. So we are going to have to work closely with CN Rail to put in our multi-use path and trail that we want to put through town. That's coming out in our comprehensive Armstrong revitalization initiative. And so we haven't had much of a relationship with CN in the last few years. It just hasn't been required. And so now we're just reestablishing those relationships and helping them to understand what we need, and they're helping us understand what they need with respect to protecting the public. And so hopefully we can make them into really good corporate partners, and perhaps they can help us to guide the people, the cyclists, through town in a way that's safe, because we will be using parts of their land as well. So that was that. And now we have Lori for planning services. Yeah, sorry.
I was just wondering about, with the CN, do we have any expectation when they're gonna finish the job they started? I thought it was gonna be done by now.
We did ask them that, but they did not have any dates for us. No, they're waiting for parts. Yeah, that was what we were told. They're just waiting for parts. So, yeah, they're not great at communication. They just deploy. And yeah. So as soon as we find out, we'll put it out to the public on our website. As much as we know, we can put out to let everybody know what's going on.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Not a ton in my updates because I have a lot of stuff in the agenda. So I just left that stuff out of the update. Building permits are still slow right now, I would say. We've got a little bit going on, as you can see, but I mean, like 4 permits in a month is pretty quiet for us even. So hopefully that'll pick up as we get into spring. We'll see. In terms of the other big project we have going on is the official community plan. I got my hot little hands on a draft, which I've been madly editing, so that's pretty exciting. I think council can expect to see an updated vision statement, new land use zones, and an updated map, which we've got drafted, some refreshed development permit areas. The whole plan is going to look a bit different. It's going to be refreshed and organized and a little bit hopefully easier to read. It's still a bit plannery, I have to admit, but I'm working on plain languaging it a little bit. We have the OCP in a week, the second round coming up, April 9th, so next week. Council will have a workshop. We have 2 open houses and we have a stakeholder workshop, as well as the pop-ups going on around town. After that, we can expect to have them take that information back. We'll be updating the plan, and then we'll be almost ready to move through the actual legislative process. This stuff has been all important, but it's not the part that's required by our legislation. We'll be sending it out to the ALC and Modi and all our partners to get their review on it. And we'll be having to have a public hearing and moving forward through all those steps as we move forward. Not on there is we did receive some news from BC Hydro. They've granted us $7,000 to go towards the landscaping at City Hall, which is really great. We'll have to provide them with a list of our plant suppliers because it's all about having the right plants. But I think that's exciting. Every little bit helps with our landscaping. So yeah, I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Lori? No. Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Lori. Corporate services, code of conduct bylaw 1924-2024. I trust we've all read it. Is there, moving forward, any explanations, or are we just going with the motion? No, good.
So, oh,
Sorry, go
okay.
ahead.
Through your worship. So in front of you, we do have the draft of the council code of conduct bylaw. It's an extensive document. Council worked really hard on determining what they wanted to include in it. The first draft that we used for the first year was just expectations of behavior. And this now is a bylaw. The first one was a policy. This is now a bylaw, which was recommended by the workshop facilitator because it just has more, teeth, that's a good word. And so council, again, has gone through this and there is a list of, what do we call them? Penalties or remedies. Remedies in there as well. It's a very serious document. It's taken a lot of time. We formulated it after 2 bylaws that are currently being used, one in Kamloops. If anybody's aware of what's going on in Kamloops right now, you'll understand how important a code of conduct is. And in Burnaby as well. We also worked with the working group for code of conduct through the Local Government Management Association, who helps us to determine best practices to put into the code. So in front of you is the code of conduct. I did include everything that council talked about at the workshop. So I'll just leave it with council. If there's any questions or concerns, anything you want clarification on, I'm here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. First of all, we will get a motion that the Code of Conduct Bylaw 2024, given first, second, and third reading. Do I have a mover? Councillor Todd, do I have a seconder? Councillor Fowler, thank you. Now I will call. Are there any questions?
Through the CAO, if I could, I do have a question, but I think it may involve an in-camera matter and relating to one of the items in here. And I'm just wondering, as it relates to the Parks and Recreation Commission, I'm just wondering if we could defer a decision till we had a discussion in camera and then perhaps bring the item back out for ratification, just to hold clarity on that issue. It has to do with contractors and council's interaction with contractors and language within 3D of the bylaw.
Might it be appropriate at this time to carry on with first, second, and third reading, and then if we require revisions to go that route?
Amendment after the fact. I'd be fine with that. Yeah, that's fine.
Anybody else take an issue with that?
Just for clarity, so this bylaw is only in relation to council to council.
That's what I interpreted as well from in reading the definitions clauses within the bylaw, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that it couldn't, that's part of the discussion I wanted to have.
Okay,
It was just
yeah,
in-
so
getting
that
clar-
was,
Getting clarity regarding who has the authority to file complaints under the bylaw, so.
okay, so the intention of the bylaw is,
It's
Council to council.
Council to council only.
and that was a decision that council made at that stakeholder meeting, or at that workshop, sorry.
Oh,
stakeholder
I
meeting.
understand that.
Okay,
Sure.
okay.
Well, I'd just like to say that I'm really glad that we went ahead and discussed this with everybody, and we've got, a pretty good document here. And for the most part, the council that we've got right now is, I have to say, after being in meetings in Victoria and listening to some of the horror stories from other places in BC, that we're really fortunate that we can sit around the table and talk about things. Don't always have to agree with them. When it's all done, we're on a par that's the motion that was passed and that we all are behind it. And we've gone through a time in our city of Armstrong meetings where things didn't go quite so smoothly, and it's horrific to be in those situations. So to have this document here and to have the council that we have right now, I think the city is really lucky. Just want to say that.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Nietzsche.
Yeah, and just speaking in general of the bylaws it's written, I really am supportive of moving forward with this. I mean, the hope is that we never ever have to use it, but it's there in case of certain circumstances, if they were to ever arise, and at least there's a procedure and a process to follow to deal with these types of situations. So I think it's proactive on our part, and I certainly will support the intent of the bylaw.
Also, let's take the opportunity to thank Don and all the staff that worked on this. It was a lot of work to wrangle in all our ideas and all our thoughts and create a document that is not only going to be binding, but fair for all of us. And I think it's a job well done. Yeah. All right, moving forward then, if there's no further question, I will call the vote. All those in favor? This will be carried unanimously. Thank you. And next, the carry concepts and engagement. Okay, so are we going to speak on this at all, Lori? Thank you.
My apologies. I was trying to figure out the best way to present this. So I'll just warn you in advance that when we get to the pages with the maps on it, they take a bit to load. So I'll just a heads up. Apparently it's the ortho photo. So I'm very excited to be able to present to council some of the draft urban design concepts. And we're at the stage right now to present these to the community, just to have a conversation in the community. So none of this is set in stone yet. Everything is ideas for conversation. Some pieces of the design you'll see is meant to address safety concerns. Some pieces are meant to increase our public space and our livability and our ability to gather downtown. And some of it will be meant for visual and functional. So I'll go through with no further ado and let's have a look at what we have. This first section here that you'll see is actually meant to support us with our official community plan rewrite. So this is some information that the consulting team has pulled together on some design guidelines for awnings so that we can continue to have awnings in the historical downtown core, but to also have some design guidelines to make sure that they work with the aesthetic, but also the function of that downtown area. So one of the key recommendations is that they be held up by the building rather than by posts, which I think helps us avoid a bunch of operational concerns that we've had lately. So these would be taken from the downtown revitalization project and actually integrated into the official community plan, which is one of the nice things about doing them simultaneously. And there's some examples down at the bottom just for illustrative purposes of what those kind of awnings could look like, but basically staying kind of with the heritage rail kind of theme. It's still pretty open. I think could really add a nice aesthetic while protecting the sidewalk from rain and snow and pedestrians from rain and snow. So the next pages, we have a bit of information around the look and feel potential for the downtown. And what we're hoping to do is get some feedback on the community to see what aspects of these resonate for them, to then push us into what the look and feel of the signage, the furniture, and the general design aesthetic downtown would look like. So the first one is based around a bit of a floral aspect with a color palette that's a little bit brighter and punchier with some more floral colors, building on some of the natural elements, looking at this kind of waving bench, integrating some of the wetland elements into some of the furniture, and bright pops of color with some street furniture. This is more into that, more focused on what that flower design could look like. So they've called it pedal, as in bike pedal. So to integrate sort of the importance of biking and the rail trail into our community, but also just bringing some colorfulness, relying on a bit of that kind of wheel shape, which is also the farming, wagon wheels, trains, cycling. It kind of ties all those together and brings in some color and has some really great potential for community art in our, not just in the downtown, but throughout the community. They've provided some examples of what light fixtures could look like. So there could be ones that had, say, a playful element like the birds on the light fixture. Options for banners, options for more permanent art that doesn't come up and down every season, but is more permanently affixed to the light fixtures. Both of these options are a heritage style light fixture, and also direct the light down, which I think is really beneficial for the night sky and for our community. This is an option for a rail screen, which they've developed. It's meant to be seen at a speed. So it's something that you'll see as you're driving and you'll get that feeling of motion, but it also integrates the feeling of the train tracks and the flowers and is, I think, a really interesting way to spruce up that rail corridor and maybe pricier, well, will be pricier than some of the other options, but maybe we look at something more aesthetic in the couplet, like right downtown at Pleasant Valley Boulevard. The second theme that they've given us to play with is more of a into the woods theme. So looking at the animals and the wetland environment, more natural colors, kind of a more muted color palette. Looking at some of the wetland birds that we have in our area, some animal tracks. Again, something to see how it resonates with our community and see which elements we might want to pull forward into the final design. This is a really interesting option for us as we move into the future. So this is a redevelopment of the parking lot beside the Wild Oak into a community gathering space. So we would maintain parking along the end of the parklet. This would be an opening gate that would allow vehicles or market stalls or vendors into the parklet. It would have some options for planting and shade and maybe using some of the pavement to break up the aesthetic, different pavement colorings, but would really provide us a great option for an additional gathering space in our downtown core. It would be integrated with the rail trail by having some bike parking out front. It would also create a bit of a separation between the current parking lot and the adjacent landowners parking lot, which has created some challenges. And it would involve lane access only. So it would close off that access to Pleasant Valley Boulevard that's right at the front. They've provided, a few picture concepts to show what it could look like. I really like the lit up downtown space. It would be a really great place for a twilight market maybe, or other opportunities. They've also provided some samples of benches that could happen in there and some planters or even some kind of shade structure. And this would be a space that the city could build on into the future. We could look at having it covered in the future. We could look at adding a bathroom in the future. It could really be a great space for our community to grow into. The next piece that we've got is talking about some of the sidewalks in the downtown core. So looking at maybe applying some treatments to them to make our downtown really stand out, the historic downtown. So that people really remember it's little things like that that people really remember when they come to a community. So in the design, as we get there, you'll see that there's more space for the sidewalks to be a bit wider, to have a bit more boulevard, and then maybe a specialized sidewalk treatment that could take some kind of elements from these to look more reminiscent of the historical boardwalks that we used to have in that area. These are just some options for bike treatments. So they could be different bike parking options throughout the area. We know we're going to need more bike facilities. And in fact, I would say we already need more bike facilities. Some of the businesses bring in and out bike racks day and night. So just starting to think about what those could look like. This middle one really resonates with me. It kind of reminds me of the hoop on a hitching post and brings that wheel shape back in. There's also the possibility of having these pop-up bike repair stations to support sort of activating and bringing the rail trail users into our community. This is the overall showing of the plan area before we get into more of the street level conversations. Do we want to pause maybe before we get there and see if anyone has any questions about that initial design stuff? The more look and feel aesthetic?
I don't have a question. I just want to say that I love most of it. Like, I really do. I think especially those bike lockups are great. They don't look like bike lockups particularly, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what they are.
Yeah.
I think they're really, really efficient.
Great.
I like the idea of petal as much as pedal.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Well, those designs actually, they go part and parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they look great.
Just a couple of things. The pedal, but I know that you got two different color palettes between the two. I prefer the pedal color palette.
The brighter
Be-
ones.
Well, not just because it's brighter, but it also incorporates the color from the Armstrong flag, which is something that I
Yeah.
think that would be really cool. And then for the town center part, I saw that you have a space there for potential food truck spot kind of built into that. One thing that to keep in mind for that I would like to see is potential outlet for food trucks so that they don't have to run generators necessarily during events. I think
Yes.
that would be not necessarily put in, but if there is any sort of construction work done, a conduit in so
Mhm.
that it's easier to do in the future.
I would say in general, having the access to power is important throughout a lot of these areas for activating the spaces, whether it's for vendors to have pop-up stands or for lighting. We've certainly heard that a lot through this process, for sure. Or bike charging. That's going to be a thing that we'll see more of, I'm sure. I don't know how we manage that, but we need to look into that.
Hate to be a little bit of a downer on this, but I've seen many communities do similar things as to what we're doing. But in particular with the gardens, it causes all sorts of problems. Time to keep them clean, to keep them weeded. Also, our service vehicles have to park out in front of there, and we're already going to be limited in lanes. So as long as there's a plan moving forward to address how we care for this is very important. I see lots of communities paving over what once was a beautiful piece of land.
Yes, absolutely, Your Worship. That's a good thing. And one of the principles that we have as we move into the design is that it has to be practical for us to maintain because we have limited resources, right? So we haven't moved into the phase of designing the landscaping, but we know that there is landscaping updates required throughout the whole project area. And certainly, how do we balance keeping them looking great and making them fairly easy to maintain? You know, we've traditionally used a lot of volunteer resources, so we need to think about how that looks moving forward. Yeah.
And in this plan, some of the elements that are here, those elements are part of the land, like these are hardscapes, so they're part of the landscaping. Landscaping isn't just plants, right?
That's right.
So when you see some of the dividers with the, I was just trying to find it again here with the round circles with the petals and
Up
all
here.
that kind of stuff,
Yep.
that I don't see that anywhere else. I think that's going to be really awesome.
Very unique.
Okay, now into the meat and potatoes. So this is the whole plan area. You can see here going basically from City Hall, Pleasant Valley to Smith, Smith to Rosedale. There are definitely discrete portions of the plan area. So the next section breaks it down pretty much block by block, I would say, to the different recommendations. Some of these are, I think, simpler than others to explain. Some of these are going to be more controversial than others. So important to remember, draft at this time. Also, we'll be not doing everything all at once and slowly phasing into these. So if we try something and it really doesn't work, maybe we don't repeat it on the next block, right? So the first block showing here is basically the block behind us. City Hall is here for orientation. The post office is here. What this shows is carrying the multi-use path along Pleasant Valley, a slight shifting of the bus. What's that called? The bus stop is the word I'm looking for, the bus stop. Simple word. And then moving along. And the intention along here would be eventually to get this connected through to Taylor Van Diest Trail, to improve the parking in front of Memorial Park, to make it more formalized, to have the trail run in front of that parking. So those are all some of those conversations that we're having with CN. We figure we might as well get everything out in the open and try and sort it all at once. Big changes in this section are the removal of the parallel parking on the trail side to make room for the trail, and changing the angled parking to parallel parking on the other side. So that does cause a bit of a reduction in parking. Actually, this is probably one of the bigger sections where the parking is reduced. So that's something that we'll have to consider as we move forward. I don't see this section as one of the first sections. It's maybe one of the later sections. So that gives us some time to try out that transition from angle to parallel. Councillor Fowler, did you have a question or did you just, okay, just check. Just checking. So I'll move on to the next section unless, I don't know what's easier, if you want to ask questions page by page or just go through it all. Okay. Oh, Councillor
It's
Weiner.
maybe just a thought. I'm seeing that the parking is potentially reduced for just a collaborative or a gathering space, and I'm seeing parking potentially reduced for changing parking parameters. I'm just wondering, you mentioned it before, maybe a parking assessment for the community might
Yeah.
be in our, would that be part of this project, or would that be something we'd need to bring forward separately?
Through your worship to Councillor Weiner, I think that we would probably do it separately. But because this is such a long phase project, it would happen while it's going on, would be my expectation, and could help provide some guidance. One of the things that you're going to see as we go through this is we're looking at where we can gain parking in other locations to try and balance losing some parking. Additionally, one of the things that we're looking at is making these stalls right in front of the businesses be shorter term parking and accessible parking, so that people who have mobility challenges are still able to access the services that they need, as well as people aren't parking there all day. So people who need to park longer can park at some of the alternate locations that we come up with.
Yes, yeah, I saw the accessibility parking, and I thought that was an excellent addition. I was thinking it, and then I read it afterwards. Is a parking assessment something that you need a motion for at this point, or is that something that you feel that should be delayed until further down the line?
Through your worship, I think I would recommend that I bring a report back on a parking assessment in general, because what that will involve is some stuff in the zoning bylaw and the official community plan. And I think the official community plan might be our trigger for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lori, just explaining for us the rationale of the going to the parallel parking as opposed to the angled parking. It's because the road will be narrowing, given that there's a multi-lane pathway and also an extension of the sidewalk width. Is that basically why the consultant is recommending going to that style parking?
I would say that's part of the reason that we're recommending moving to parallel, but the other part is that it's just not as safe to have that angle parking. We have a lot of large trucks, and when you're a car parked beside the large truck, you can't see if vehicles are coming. I watched two people the other day pull backward U-turns out of some of the angled parking stalls. I think we're trying to increase visibility and sight lines, especially in areas where there's crossings. I'm finding it challenging. So it's about, we do gain a bit of space on the sidewalk, but it's also about just making the community a bit safer.
And then given the fact that this will effectively narrow the roadway width, which in general tends to be a traffic calming measure in
That's
itself, narrow roads tend to lead to slower speeds. I'm just wondering if that could be considered, maybe a speed reduction combined with the calming, and we look at angled parking as a possibility, given that situation. So I think that's all feedback we're going to get, as we're simply in the conceptual stage right now, but that's feedback. So I just wanted to clarify that was the rationale for recommending going to the parallel parking.
Next page. Okay. I've zoomed in a bit because it's still a bit hard to see. Okay, so this is the two one-way streets on Pleasant Valley Boulevard with the train station being right here. So what you see there's a lot that's important on this slide. You see the rail trail continuing along this way. And then we've had it wrap right around to go back to Spirit Square so that people could ride their bikes and park at Spirit Square. We've looked at, on this side, again, going to parallel parking, and reducing some of the accesses here, right here, so that this parklet won't have drive-in access. This business will also have lane access only. These all have lane accesses, and most of the businesses along here have lane access. On the other side, we have, again, going to the parallel, but we have space for parallel on both sides, which then reduces the amount of parking that is lost in this section, and helps with having access to parking along these businesses. And we have been able to extend it almost to Spirit Square on this side. There will be a little sidewalk here to get people to a safe place, so it can connect right up to Spirit Square, or they can go to a crosswalk over here. The sidewalks here will be wider. There will be more space for, like the green areas are more space for activation, either landscaping or maybe it's benches. It could be other facilities in those areas. And around Spirit Square, we'll have more public space. One of the things that we really looked at is usually when the street is closed, it's closed at Shepherd's Lane. So really focused the public aspects on that portion of it. And we did a bit less on the other portion of it.
Just how do we address the commercial delivery issues when we go here?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Your Worship. My expectation is that we'll still have commercial deliveries. They tend to pull over kind of on the edge. We're not going to be losing that much space because we have already that kind of small jumbly sidewalk in that area. So I think our expectation is that we will still have commercial deliveries to some of these businesses, and it will be a bit awkward. But because the road is being narrowed up, this is meant to really slow traffic down. And I think our goal, and we'll probably end up moving to a truck route, but is that it'll be less comfortable for big trucks unless they're doing a direct delivery in those areas.
So that was a question I had to Your Worship, to Lori. When we talk about widening the sidewalk widths, currently, I don't know how we're around 2 meters,
I'm not sure the specifics.
But
yeah.
what is the proposed width?
I don't have the numbers on here, and it kind of varies depending on the locations.
The point they're making though is that for commercial delivery though, with a wider sidewalk certainly would make it feasible for a commercial trucker with a pallet and a pallet jack to park in the city parking lot and be able to maneuver a pallet of goods to one of the businesses or whatever, using our sidewalks too, which would
Mhm.
be better than blocking traffic or whatever else in there as well. So I think there might be some opportunity that way as well to move that commercial traffic off the road and use the sidewalks if they're a wider width.
Mhm. And as we get into the design portions, we can look at kind of those pieces and how we make sure that they're most feasible.
Lori, in one of the first drafts, with the changing of parking on the north side,
Mhm.
the way with this second draft, there's 43 parking spots and wasn't there only like 47 or something now? So we haven't really lost much parking along there, which would be great.
Yeah, I
It's
have
really
to apologize.
close.
I had the numbers specifically.
Yeah.
The majority of the lost parking is on that stretch by the post office. But in this, we still lose a few, but not so many because we still have parking on the other side.
Like maybe only 4.
Yeah, it's not that many. Yeah, which is nice. Any other questions on, yes?
There'll be separation of something from the bike path to the roadway. Of
That's
some
correct.
description.
Yeah.
So at the corner of Okanagan and Pleasant Valley North there, when these parked his truck to unload beer to the liquor store, I just
Mhm.
don't see how anybody's gonna get around them. Yeah, you'd have to, that's a long way
And
to
then-
haul. I don't see people, it's a long way to haul stuff. I don't see people being happy about that.
Well, there's an alley there too.
Where's the alley? Behind?
Yeah,
by the
behind,
door.
yeah.
And a-
Yes,
It's pretty
yeah,
narrow
it's-
for a truck.
But they'll have to figure it out. Anyway, I just,
Yeah.
but as long, but there'll be safety precautions between the
Yeah,
bike and the alley.
and there may need to be a design that allows, like in certain locations, that allows the truck to kind of climb the curb a little bit.
My other question was, are those crosswalks raised? On
We
the-
haven't got that far in the design this time. I suspect there will be some raised crosswalks throughout the plan area. Yes. Yeah. Anything else on this one? Okay, so the next one is simpler. This shows the rail trail alignment in the current road right of way. This is reflecting the scenario that CN doesn't allow us to build in the right of way. I suspect that we have enough space in here to do so. They have talked about, protecting the potential for future twinning of a little bit of this section here. So I think they're being cautious. So just the storage section, just like this little section right here. So we are preparing for the worst case scenario, which would be that we narrow up Pleasant Valley Road in that section. I'm hoping that we don't end up here, but in any case, we will connect the rail trail through down here to Mill, and then it'll cross over and continue up the north side there. Yes, it would be still delineated from traffic, still separated. And we would have to physically reline the road and shift it over. It's quite wide in that section. We've taken the measurements, so there's room to do it. It's just not my preferred alignment. But for now, this is the safest thing to show you. Additionally, there's an option to go across here. Where the rail trail will come in, they'll be able to cross. We're looking at, and that's one thing actually I haven't talked about, but we're looking at narrowing up these intersections so that instead of having side-by-side cars for the turning cars and the straight cars, they will be stacking behind each other. Most of the places where we've done that doesn't have a lot of stacking. So it just increases the visibility in those intersections, and you're not looking past another car. It decreases some of the confusion. And I think it'll be a good way to, without completely fixing some of the challenges we have, like if I show you here, it'll reduce them. So at this location here, where Pleasant Valley hits the one-way and it feels awkward, there wouldn't be a second lane anymore. So you would just go and across, so you wouldn't have, the number of people I see confused that are in the turning lane that turn the other direction. It would reduce some of that confusion. And then the same thing here, narrowing that up to one lane for people turning left, right, or straight, and here as well. So it just reduces the number of stacked, like side-by-side cars entering those intersections. Well, in this, we're buying the rail trail or the trail alignment sticking out here and here. Actually, in all three locations here. It's really buying more space for the rail trail. We still have to have quite a wide sweeping corner so the trucks can make it. And then in here, we're gonna lose some space because of the alignment of the crossing arm when it goes in. So we haven't bought a ton of green space, but we've bought space for the rail trail. On Smith Drive, you'll see as we go into the next one that this moves into a dedicated bike lane. So that's one of the new things along Smith Drive. I'm still a bit nervous about this because of the number of driveways that are crossing, but I want to see what everybody thinks. And we know through our active transportation plan and through our experts that this is something that we need. So we're going to see how it works. This is including the removal of that middle turning lane, which I've been watching quite a bit lately and does seem to cause quite a bit of confusion. So I don't know how that's gonna work, but I think it'll be good. And then otherwise, we're looking at just talking to some of the business owners in Smith Drive, along Smith Drive in general, to talk about the size of their accesses onto the road and narrowing it down. And there may be some cases where we look at reducing them. The next section is just that last end of Smith Drive out to Rosedale. So in this section, again, still the dedicated bike lane. The most controversial thing, though, I anticipate on this is removal of parking along Smith Drive. So this parking causes so many challenges in this section. I know that there are parking challenges in this area in general, but trying to come in and out of the businesses with the cars parked on either side of the driveways is a real challenge. And the best way to do that is to eliminate that parking, have a sidewalk and a bike lane all along the whole thing so that we're moving into a more pedestrian, bicycle first kind of design in our community. And then the last piece that I have for you is parking on Patterson. So one of the things that we came up with to balance the loss of some of the parking downtown was to formalize the parking on Patterson, to get more vehicles in that location, to clean it up, to make it not only look nicer, but be more functional. This is about a block away from downtown. So if people, especially people who are parking all day, it's a really great option for them. Also, if people are parking here, they have to walk along the sidewalk and then they have to go up Okanagan. And we've heard that a lot of the businesses in this area aren't getting as much traffic. So if we're driving people to this parking area, they'll have to go by the businesses. They'll have to walk by the businesses. It'll encourage them to go in and visit those businesses. So it's trying to help offset the parking, but also trying to draw people into other areas of our downtown.
Are you done? You're not
Absolutely.
ever going to be done. So I like the thought that's been put into parking, especially downtown. I really think with the addition along Patterson and cleaning up that mess, because that really is an eyesore there. I think all of that could work out okay. But I really worry about the parking down in front of the Starbucks in that area, because people have to have a place to park. So I know most of the businesses on the west side, they have parking except for the vehicle mechanic spot. But I do also see some vehicles that are parked there overnight and on weekends. So in the meantime, because this implementation isn't going to take place for another year or two, could we not start putting some signs up that eliminates people that park there like for a couple of days at a time? Because when you get things like campers out there, they're the ones that are really causing the problems for sight lines when you want to get out. So just a thought. And then I had another question too about, oh, the rail wants to save in case they have an addition. So I know it's a different rail line that has the piece that wouldn't let us put the trail all the way to Lansdowne, but it's sitting there naked.
Yeah.
Well, okay, bare. And there's never a train or a track or anybody storing anything there. It just seems a little bit ludicrous to think that we would have to put aside a rail trail for some pie in the sky idea that there's going to be an expansion.
Well, what
This is being recorded, I understand that.
No, I mean, what I would say is, for this section of the track is one of the few, what they emphasize is this is one of the few locations where they actually have access to the track, and that they have been approached by a number of businesses wanting to use this as a loading point. So, I think they're thinking that there may be an opportunity to use this little spur at the end as a future business opportunity, and they want to protect that, which I understand. Who knows? I think track access is great there, but road access might be a bit challenging in that location. So there's a number of things that they would have to address as they went through that process, but I think they are just protecting their future interests.
I just like to agree with Councillor Fowler about the parking on Smith Drive there with, I think one camper leads to 2, leads to 3. So if we could get some signage up before that occurs, that would be a great idea, I think.
And just the bike lane, or is that going to be highlighted in color, or how do you delineate that from the road? Is it just a line? I've seen all sorts of different alternatives around.
Thank you for that question, Your Worship. We have in a previous iteration actually had some, why do I always forget what these are called? Cross sections of what that road could look like. My expectation is that the bike lane will be separated from the road with also some separation from the sidewalk. There's a surprising amount of room in there if it's not taken up by parking, and the boulevard is quite a lot bigger than it appears, I think, in some locations. So when we come to the next round of drawings, once we kind of do all the tweaks from the engagement, we'll be able to bring you some of those cross sections so you can see what that would look like.
Specifically along Smith Drive and all the businesses and the concerns that we have there, I note in some municipalities, they actually have like a green bike pathway, and they do it in front of driveways and stuff. It catches drivers' attention and cyclists to be aware. So hoping that's part of our proponent going forward here.
There will definitely be a need for a visual trigger of some kind. Absolutely.
Through your worship, I think, and just to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, but I think the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure in 2019 came out with a new active transportation design guidelines framework that provides guidelines for municipalities and the province when they're designing active transportation routes. So there's everything from different styles of crosswalks to how you properly delineate bike lanes and color them, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm assuming that our consultants are using those new design guidelines that came out in 2019 to inform this plan. And I would imagine that future design work would incorporate those MOTI standards into those as well.
Yeah, I certainly hope that that's the case, because I do see that it's not done in lots of municipalities. They just put up a line and a picture of a bicycle in it. Some are highlighted in green or other colors. And there are specialized crosswalks for cyclists that imply that they don't have to stop and get off their bike and go. I mean, there's all sorts of things like you suggest. I just hope we're going to use the most up-to-date things here in our community.
Your worship, just on that, I know our active transportation plan identifies various types of bicycling access. Because this would be one of our main connecting points, it's recommending something a little stronger than just paint on the road. There are other locations where it recommends those, they're called sharrows or just different paint demarcations, but this isn't one of those locations. Philippa, could you put the, oh, no, you can't. I can. the internet? Okay. So my recommendation to council today is that the draft concept drawings for the comprehensive Armstrong revitalization initiative, it says project, are endorsed for the purpose of community engagement.
And the mover, Councillor Weiner, seconder, Councillor Nietzsche. Any further questions? Seeing none,
No question, just a comment. I just want to reemphasize that I like the way that the motion is crafted and that this is conceptual in design and is being brought forward for engagement. So we are going to be soliciting feedback from the community, and I'm sure that we will hear lots of feedback from the community on this project. So I'm looking forward to that. So I certainly support the recommendation moving forward.
thank you, Councillor Nietzsche. And then I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that will be carried unanimously. And we get Lori up again with the Planning Services Development Procedure amended bylaw.
No.
Nope, provincial housing changes legislation. I'm one ahead of ourselves. It's all Lori's show.
I don't do things in halves. It's like all at once. So I apologize. This was supposed to be presented at the last council meeting, but I had a family emergency. So here I am. I wanted to provide council with an update on the provincial housing changes. These changes are going to have impacts in Armstrong for sure. They're having impacts already at a staff level as we're preparing to address them through the updates of the official community plan, the zoning bylaw, and you'll see later today even changes in our development approval procedures bylaw and connected to the changes Philip is bringing forward in the, what's that called? It's not communicate, the notification bylaw. Can you go to the next slide for me, Philip, please? So I have provided here just a really high level look at what the changes are. The province has provided a nice thick document for us to go through to get all the details with. For us, I think understanding at a high level what the changes are is important. And then just know that any of the changes we're doing to our bylaws will be looked at by our legal team to make sure we're in compliance with the legislation. So primarily, the big changes that we are looking at here is an increase in density in something that the province has deemed restricted zones. So a restricted zone is basically any zone that restricts you to a single family or restricts your density to a single family density. And so all of our single family zones and some of our comprehensive development zones are considered restricted zones. So that means we have to look at a comprehensive update of the zoning bylaw. Units under 280 square meters have to be allowed to have 3 dwelling units on it. Units over 280 have to be allowed to have 4. If you're near a transit stop with 15-minute service, which we don't have any in Armstrong, you have to allow 6 units. So that doesn't apply to us. And if you're a Heritage Act designated property, you're exempt. So we only have about 8 Heritage Act designated residential properties. I'm just creating a bit of an exemption for them in the zoning bylaw as I write it. I did a bit of a dive into our parcels. We can do a bit of work on our GIS system. We have no parcels under 280 square meters. So the 3-unit designation doesn't apply. All our parcels will have to have at least 4 units on them. Even the tiny ones. We have to allow at least 4. It doesn't mean people need to develop that many. People can develop what they develop. And 280 square meters is 3,000 square feet. So it's very tiny, and these are very urban densities. We don't have many people in Armstrong wanting to develop to these densities.
Just a question brought up by a builder is the permeable soil requirement for some of the areas. So hearing those sizes and the number of units on there, is there still a requirement for the
Yes.
permeable soil?
Yes, let me get into that in a second.
Just as a quick aside, so if you don't have to put 4 on, you can put 1 on.
That's
That's
correct.
it. So nobody's forcing anybody that they have to do 4.
That's
Okay,
correct.
perfect.
Yeah. The challenge that we'll see is that we won't be able to stop people if they want to do 4, and you won't have a variance process. You won't be able to comment on what your neighbor does. So in terms of a question around like say 50% site coverage, so we are still allowed to have setbacks. We're still allowed to have height regulations. We're still allowed to have permeable surface regulations. However, they have indicated that these can't be so stringent that you can't develop the parcels in the manner anticipated. So if we're going to have a large permeable surface requirement, we can't have a short height, for example. If we're going to have really big setbacks, we have to let them go up. So we have to look a little bit at what we're going to do. I mean, the good news for us is we have pretty big parcels. So even at a 50% site coverage, which is what they recommend, there's lots of room still to develop on most of the parcels, not all of them. So the province has released that policy manual that goes through all the details of this. And we'll have to go through our zoning bylaw, make our recommended changes. I'll present them to council. I have to provide you with a report that says we've considered all of the recommendations in the policy manual, but you don't have to do what the policy manual says. You just have to consider what it says. So you can choose something that goes against that policy manual, but I have to have provided you a report that explains it. You have to consider it, and then you can do as you will. So there is a little bit of flexibility. We can't limit the number of units, but maybe we have bigger setbacks or shorter heights. We have still some say in some of the details. They've also passed legislation that says our OCP doesn't have to be in alignment with our zoning bylaw until December 31st, 2025. So that is to require us to change the zoning bylaw quickly. As you know, councils are bound by what their official community plan says. You're not supposed to make decisions against it, but in this case, they're allowing them to be misaligned for another 1.5 years. They're also requiring all municipalities to redo their housing needs assessment based on some information that they have not yet released. And then once we do that, then we have to update our OCP to reflect those and then make any changes to the zoning bylaw again that might be required. I just put in the short-term rentals here because you'll probably get questions. We are under the threshold population for short-term rentals. Additionally, we don't allow short-term rentals generally in Armstrong anyways. The zoning bylaw prohibits vacation rentals. Broadly, we do allow some in the commercial areas, but they're based on more of our motel hotel definition than short-term rentals. There are bed and breakfasts allowed. They're kind of more of a old style bed and breakfast. They've been allowed in the zoning bylaw forever, but it's a little bit different than a whole home Airbnb rental. The new provincial requirements will require that the host it be their principal residence and that they be there, and they can do the secondary suite or a carriage house if they were renting them out. But again, that doesn't affect us because we're too small. Okay, other changes that they made is they created a new category for public hearings. So right now we have cases where public hearings are required. We have cases where council can choose to have a public hearing. Now we also have a category whereby public hearings are prohibited. So public hearings are prohibited for any changes to do with this legislation. And they're also prohibited for a residential development that's in alignment with the official community plan or a mixed use development that's at least 50% residential. So basically the province is working to remove the public hearing requirement around residential infill development. We can still have our hazardous area development permit areas, our environmental development permit areas. The province has created some new development cost charge powers that relate specifically to fire and police, which we weren't allowed to use development cost charges for expansions to those previously. They have additionally created new amenity cost charge policies whereby we can charge amenities for recreation facilities. What these changes mean is that we are gonna have to move from our amenity cost charge policy, which is really a way of getting development cost charges sort of, to a formal development cost charge policy. And you've seen that already in the work plans for this year that we're preparing to get that done. I am not expecting at this time that we'll put forward a recommendation that we take on the new amenity cost charges. I don't think we have any big recreation facilities that'll be triggered by development, which is really the purpose of that. But maybe that's something we may want to consider as we move forward. Yeah. Okay. So in summary, for Armstrong, this means all of our small residential parcels have to have at least 4 units. Any of our large residential parcels, like our agricultural or our country residential parcels, we have to allow 2 units, which we already do anyways. We're updating our zoning, developing a DCC, updating our development approvals, our notice provisions, doing a new housing needs assessment, and making sure our OCP is in alignment. That's it. That's it. Yeah. The speed version. Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor Kramer. Yeah, a couple of questions here. So just to be clear, so they're allowed up to 4 units on one parcel of land, right? And those 4 units are not to be sold. They're for rental purposes only.
The legislation doesn't specify that, so they could strata them and sell them.
They could strata them.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously services to a lot are set up currently for a single dwelling unit on a parcel of land. So during the permit phase, they would have to upgrade those in order to properly supply the home,
Yes.
such as sewer and water.
So if their services don't have capacity for the number of units that they're building, they would have to upgrade those services, definitely.
Okay. That has a significant impact on our current infrastructure.
So the question that's really the question is, do we have capacity in our pipes and in our water and our lagoons to manage this? I mean, I think lagoons are plenty, and then the pipes is going to be our challenge. The good news is I don't think we'll see 100 applications for this coming in tomorrow, but it's definitely something that we're considering in our modeling. And council will see some of the results of that shortly.
And the last thing is that I don't necessarily, I don't know, I can't predict, but I don't see people pushing houses over and putting up fourplexes necessarily. I see this more as building a basement suite in a carriage house. As what people are probably going to do with that. So with a phased approach like that, when it comes to services, is there a way that we can make sure that their lots are adequately serviced at any point during that?
Definitely. So the subdivision servicing bylaw would be triggered when the building permit comes in.
Got it.
And so at building permit time, we'll be checking their services to make sure they're adequate. I think you're right. I think we'll see more of a trickle than a big uptake on it. We've already allowed carriage houses and secondary suites for quite some time. And we've only had, 4 or 5 carriage houses. This will simplify the process. It will remove the consultation with your neighbors. So that might encourage a few more people. But in other communities where they've studied the impact of these changes, it's been a fairly low uptake rate. And I think the more rural we are, the less likely we'll see significant uptake in it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Was there any further questions?
Your worship, I think it's important, Lori, when we were doing that business after business, I had a lot of questions with respect to, do we have to? So I don't know if you want to just touch on that. It seemed to be a surprise to me, but a common question that evening. So.
Do we have to build the 4 units? Yeah. So this is an enabling legislation and will allow people to build up to 4 units, but there's no triggers within that legislation to require that.
Seeing anything further, I guess we can move on to 6.4. Planning yes, Planning Services Development Procedures Amendment Bylaw 1922-2024.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an amendment to the Development Application Procedures Bylaw, basically to reflect some of the changes that are coming through with the amendment to, can I have the? The big change that we're seeing in here, there are 2 big changes. One is to make sure that we reflect this local government must not hold a public hearing requirement. And then the second is to provide an alternative form of publishing a notice. Our current requirements now require 2 weeks of a newspaper. We're finding now that we don't have a local newspaper that's not reaching people as effectively. So we want to expand the way that we reach out notice. And Philippa has a report on that one, but this is tweaking of the development procedures bylaw to reflect that. And then there's also some minor housekeeping items that we've noticed, a couple words that are out of alignment with our current wording. I've got a red line version of the bylaw here. You've got it in front of you. But I have removed land use contracts from the bylaw because the province has created an expiry date on land use contracts, so it's not going to be relevant. We're not going to see any new ones, and we're not going to amend any at this point in the game. So I've just removed them. Additionally, I've added in the new official community plan, we're going to include a section on development approval information, because the legislation actually requires it not to be in this bylaw, but to be in our official community plan. So I've just, in order to accommodate this transitional place we're at right now, I've just added "and the official community plan" here. I don't like saying rezoning. I like calling them zoning amendments instead of rezoning. So I'm just changing that wording. And then here, we said that there was no charge for council to request a reconsideration on minor permits, but in fact, what we've done is created a charge, which brings it up to the cost of a regular variance permit because it's being seen by council. So that just reflects that change in that bylaw. And then here you'll see, this is just also reflecting that we don't always have a public hearing. So what we've been doing is, instead of coming to council, asking you to authorize drafting a bylaw, bringing it back, taking it back, we're just going to draft the bylaw for council, bring it with the first report. Then you can decide if you want to move forward with it or not. In some cases, we will need to have a public hearing advertised after you see it. In other cases, you'll be able to give it readings right away, depending on the situation. So it's just kind of updating it with that wording, but also with our current process. If we have to bring a request for you to authorize us to draft a bylaw, it just adds one more meeting to that cycle of development approvals. Oh, this is just wording about removal of signs. It's nothing major. We've just taken pursuant to the Local Government Act because, of course, it's pursuant to the Local Government Act. Everything we do is. Confirmation of payment, submission of payment. This is something that I don't know if you'll hear about, but when council endorses a bylaw amendment, sometimes there's conditions on it. So maybe they have to do a geotechnical study or some further things. Right now, well, historically, we didn't have a expiry date. So at the last, when we introduced this, we put 2 one-year periods. Now we're reducing it to one-year period for them to complete those tasks. We're just finding people are leaving things hanging out, and then at the last minute, they're rushing in trying to get everything met. This shortens that period and makes them really make sure they're ready to move that bylaw amendment forward. This is a removal of the carriage house notification stuff because we won't be doing neighbor notifications with carriage house anymore. And I think everything else is, if I can get to it. This is the advertising in 2 consecutive issues of the newspaper. And then that's it. Those were all the changes. So I'll just put this here. Where is it? Here? Oh, right, because we're in the thing. So I'll just leave the resolution that I've recommended before council, that the City of Armstrong Development Application Procedures Amendment Bylaw number 1922-2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
All right. Like to, the motion forward. Mover. Counselor Todd, thank you. Counselor Dropla for a seconder, and any questions? Just for a technicality, since we removed, sorry, let me get my train of thought here. The notifications, does this have to be done after we change that policy, or is that fine?
I think it's fine because we don't have any that we're considering right at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that will be carried unanimously. Thanks for your hard work on that, Lori. And 6.5, corporate services. Welcome, Philippa.
Warren did look up what that term that we were talking about was, the body. It is to do with lift trucks and protecting people when they're, or protecting the truck from hitting the overpass, right? Yeah, so it was the right term. It just meant something unusual for us. Yeah.
All right, now that Lori's decided to let someone else speak. So this evening, I am bringing forward the public notice bylaw 1919. And I do believe this is probably the shortest bylaw I've ever written. Consists of 2 little blurbs. So this one, in the community charter, currently, the sort of, if you are publicly legislated to bring something forward to the public, be it public hearing or land disposition, your council calendar for the year, we have to do public notification for that as well. We are mandated to do it in a newspaper. As you know, Armstrong no longer has a local newspaper, so we've been advertising in the Vernon Morning Star. Not ideal for a few reasons. One, it's a Vernon paper. Not everyone receives the paper, and it also requires a lot of time as well, getting everything prepared and out there. So I want to say it was 2 years ago that the government added into the community charter that if you wish, you can bring forth a bylaw that gives you options. And in this bylaw, they gave a few suggestions. Facebook was one, web page, email notification, signs, sort of this, that, and the other thing. And you have to choose 2. It doesn't, you can still use the newspaper, but if you bring forth for example, this bylaw, then you always have to, when it is a mandated public notification, you must use those two things. We've selected our website and also an email subscription service, which, as you know, we launched earlier in March. Reasoning for that, I decided not to go with Facebook, even though it is quite well established now and we have a good set of followers. It's a little more casual than what I would like. We would still definitely post it on Facebook, but I don't want it to be part of our bylaw. I want to ensure that we have something a little more official out there because we are an official body. So that is the reasoning for going with these two. We are obviously really pushing our email subscription service being new. So we've got that going on. Couple advantages for doing our notification this way is one, advertising costs. Granted, 2023, we didn't have to put out a lot of funds for advertising. In an election year, absolutely we do. But even things like our property disposition or a lease, like the KNRB, we had to advertise for that. So the little things, if there's lots of big developments going on, we have to advertise that. So this method is a little more instant. We can craft everything, we can get it out. And if there happens to be an error, very easy to fix and replace. We don't have to repost everything. We just quickly do it. Still have to follow our timelines, but we don't have to wait another week to get that going. So, bringing forward our bylaw, if I can get this going. There we go. The recommendation that I'm bringing forward is that the public notice bylaw 1919-2024 be given first, second, and third readings.
Will be moved by Councillor Nietzsche, second Councillor Valstar. Any questions or comments? Councillor Weiner.
Thank you, Your Worship. It might be a short bylaw, but it's certainly probably one of the more important ones. We're going to get the information out there. It's glad to hear how we wouldn't stick to one medium or one software company like Facebook. We want something more agnostic that reaches out through email, or that makes a lot of sense to me. And the ability to change it was really important as well. But just in hearing from the chamber tonight and their alternate types of support that they offer and the demographic that we have in our community that don't use technology to the extent that we'd like because of the efficiency and the effectiveness of it. What options do we have? Is there a mail subscription that they might be able to sign up for? How can we get the information to them? Is that a consideration as well?
It has been because we do have a senior population. I'm also of the belief that quite a few of our seniors actually do have access because they have grandchildren and they want to be in contact with those grandchildren. They want the pictures. And so for a mail hard copy subscription, that will not be part of our bylaw, because then, of course, we would have to send that to every single resident as one of our options. This way, we are more than happy to help people sign up. This way also, as opposed to someone having to take that newspaper, say they know someone that doesn't get a paper, they have to run out, photocopy it, deliver that copy. This way they can send it, they can quickly print it. It's much easier to transfer it amongst our residents. It can be printed and posted anywhere if someone wants to do that. Say they live in a senior's home, they can do that. Our goal is to get the notification out to as many people as possible. And at this point, the newspaper is not doing it. It's just not. As far as our options, we are limited, but these seem to be the most viable and most easily accessible and also the most easily transferable.
Just a follow-up comment, just from what I've seen and the people that I've worked with and some of the seniors and whatnot, there are challenges, unfortunately, with accessing that, and even just mail accidentally going to the people's junk mail and missing those messages. And or a challenge outside of, I mean, I say mail subscription, I mean, people are saying, hey, I would prefer this similar to what the chamber is doing. I'd like to receive this by package or by mail if I can pick it up. I don't know how that notification would go out. Another option I was thinking was even just a sign, one of our TVs even pointed at the window or something along those lines for people to be able to see a signage of some kind for that could be updated through the same methodology that we have with our website. But in my mind, I do think there needs to be an option. I do understand that we want two options that are the most efficient and effective, but I think something else would be good.
Yeah,
for our
we
community.
definitely won't be stopping at
Exactly.
just those two. It will be, we will always post them up on the lobby TVs, and we will always use our other options such as our social media. This is just because we must take two and we must use those two. So if we start listing 3 or 4, we must use those 3 or 4. And if by accident we miss one week, then we have to go back and start again.
Yeah, through your worship. So we do sit down as a group, as a management team, and review our communication options when it comes to bigger projects. So things like the OCP and the CARRY program, we do have brochures, we do have posters, we do have newsletters. We include them in mail outs for our newsletters. So we do look at other options for things that are big. Again, like Philippa said, the small, not the smaller, but the things that we have to advertise, such as property disposition, we do just need a couple of musts that are easier for us to utilize. But yeah, you are right. We would definitely review any type of project and ensure that we have a communication strategy that reaches as many people as we can in the community.
Thank you, Worship. Just along the lines of what Councilor Wayne is saying, and to speak to what the CEO was talking about there, I think what as council we're concerned about is the pushback from the community that says, well, we didn't know about this, right? How are we supposed to know about this if we didn't find it in a newspaper? Well, newspapers are old technology, and I get that we have to advance on, so that makes good sense to me. I think it's expensive. I think it's cumbersome. I think the dates don't coincide with you're trying to plan for when you had public hearings and meetings and advertised dates. So I like the streamlining effect of that. What I'm wondering though is if perhaps we need some sort of a policy or procedure that says that there's something that that staff has to follow in terms of ensuring that we're doing as much as we possibly can to ensure that we're communicating that out to the public. And whether that be, you don't have to specify Facebook or Instagram or whatever else, but just saying it will be broadcast over social media a minimum of so many times or something to that effect. And just going to that extent so that, and I just want to clarify, we still have the requirement though, like if a person was doing a big subdivision that triggered a public hearing, they still have to erect a sign on the actual physical property. Is that still a requirement? That says that the property is going to be.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Rezoning, whatever. So there could be information on there that directs somebody to where they can get information about where the public hearing made that. But anyways, that was just a suggestion that I think I would agree with Councilor Wayner that there is some concern perhaps that the community wouldn't be properly informed of a potential public hearing.
Through your worship, for a policy or a procedure, we are actually already mandated through the community charter. So some things we must advertise 1 week. Some things we must advertise 2. This is how we must advertise them. So if we put together another policy, we are basically going to be doubling up on things which we don't really want to do.
No, I appreciate that. I think the issue here is that we're meeting the legislative requirements by having 2 mediums identified within the bylaw. So that's being identified. I think that what we're suggesting though is that we require that staff to go above and beyond what the minimum legislative requirement is to make sure that we are properly communicating those out to the public. As much as I have trust in staff to make sure that you guys are going to be putting stuff on Facebook and whatever else, at least there's some accountability there to make sure that we are following that process. That's all.
All right.
So I like the fact that we as City Hall, Mayor, Council staff have increased our communication with the community in the last few years. But as much as I hear all the cost savings and the ease, there are still an element of people alive that don't do computers, that used to read a newspaper, that don't have a newspaper anymore. And we've talked, I think, maybe at Parks and Rec, and maybe at this table as well, about having a digital reader board. That have we given any consideration, or could we give some consideration in the future to having some kind of a reader board on our city landscaping project? I know there's a little bit more work in doing it, but people do drive by a lot, and I am concerned that we keep trying to communicate as much as we can. And I live with someone, if he didn't have his wonderful wife to keep him informed of all of the things going on in the community, he'd know nothing. So, and I know he's not alone. So just as long as we keep that, you know, I think as council, we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to communicate as well as we can to as many as we can. And I know you've got that part down pretty pat, but I think we just need to keep our options open for opportunities to improve on that.
Absolutely, and we do keep looking and searching and trying new things to figure out what is best. This is more of, for those legislative ones, this is just more of a way for us to reach a broader audience.
Part of, part of the work plan for 2024 for corporate services is to create a communication strategy for council to consider as well. So you will have more input on how we reach out to the public.
I think that the bigger the situation, the more press it's gonna get anyway. Right? If it's just the little niggly things you have to do, I think this is fine for that. But if we're knocking down streets and changing things over, the TVs will be here as well, so.
I'm also a big supporter of Councillor Fowler's suggestion about a reader board. And if we can do something here, it can be used for so many things in our community, not just those notifications, but upcoming events and allowing the chamber opportunities to use it, or other community groups. And I think it's something we should move forward to. I appreciate that this is meeting our legislative requirements, and I think that's what we need to do here tonight, is just to ensure that. And I'm glad we're taking it one step farther, using Facebook as a third medium that's not listed. And we can continue to find ways to make this, do this better, but our due diligence is being, getting those legislative requirements fulfilled. And I think what has been brought forward will work just fine.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, seeing this makes sense to me, to have it streamlined, efficient, effective. That is what we're looking to do. It makes sense to me, and hearing that we're looking to look at our communication strategy later makes me feel comfortable with moving ahead with this. And I also agree that a reader board would potentially be an excellent idea to look at and investigate further.
I
Thank
can
you.
ensure I'll put a reader board into the communications plan.
Any further comments or questions? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that will be passed unanimously. And I believe Mr. Smith. Funding request.
Oh, there we go. It's a good thing we didn't have the mic on that. So with Make Water Work, we provide an annual contribution of $2,500. I didn't get a chance to take a look, but that was an increase, I believe, from 3 years ago, that we did increase that amount. But Make Water Work has come back to us after we've actually already done our budget. So we have within our 5-year plan, a budget of $2,500 per year. They've come back to us and said that their costs are increasing for their advertising. As we know, everything is going up in price, but staff are recommending that we maintain the amount that we've allotted for this year. And that we will look at it for future considerations for next year for increasing the amount. They have not provided a specific amount of what they're asking for. It was just an open, can you contribute more? So the recommendation is that the annual contribution of $2,500 to the Make Water Work Matching Funds Program be maintained for 2024.
That'll be moved by Councillor Drapala. Seconder, Councillor Valsar, thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Todd.
Perhaps they should reconsider where they do their advertising.
I would wait, yeah, and since we've already got this budgeted for this year, I'm quite content with doing that. And we also have to look at what we're doing in kind this year, just about water conservation and all the efforts by our staff to try to reduce that all is also a big cost contributor. So I'm very happy at out of the 2,500 and then reevaluating it next year when we get something firmer. Any further question? All those in favor? And that will be passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, under correspondence, letter from the Armstrong Trail Society. Not sure how we want to address this today.
Yeah. So we have in front of us a letter from the Armstrong Small Machine Trail Society requesting council participation on their society. Traditionally, we have had a counselor on the committee. We changed our process a little bit this last year to reset our committees and commissions. And so anybody that's not a council or a committee of council has had to come forward to request council participation. So I know that Philippa did pass around the actual bylaw that governs, or the constitution that governs the Trail Society to council and their bylaws. So you would have a little bit of extra information. So this would be up to council as to whether or not they want or someone is willing to give the time to sit on the Trails Society.
Where's that?
So there was
Okay.
an updated resolution put on there? Philippa, did you have a resolution on the agenda? Because it's not showing up on all of ours, no? Okay.
Interesting. Okay, well, we're sitting at 7.2 then, requesting council representation. We'll carry on with that and we'll figure out what we're missing in 7.1. Any discuss?
There were two letters from the Armstrong Trail Society. 7.1 was the request for a letter of support.
Sorry,
At
I
the point,
skipped.
we just
I
jumped over the
skipped.
agenda.
I jumped over.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize.
So we'll continue on with 7.2 since
Okay.
it's open, and then we'll go back to 7.1.
Yeah.
Discussion on 7.2, Councilor Nietzsche.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. I asked that staff circulate a copy of the current agreement between the Trail Society and the city. Just for some additional background information, I was the previous representative to that committee. I attended for several meetings at the beginning of the term, and then I haven't been attending regularly since for some personal reasons. But what I have found, and just to give some insight, what I found that during those society meetings that I was attending, is that many of the questions that were being posed that might have been being posed to council representatives were quite technical in nature, and actually something that an elected official wouldn't be able to answer. Examples would be, stuff related to subdivision referral requests, or commentary regarding upcoming trail planning or trail planning initiatives, and something that would be dealing with planners or our public works staff. So when I reviewed the services agreement between the city and the Trail Society, I found that it was fairly vague in its scope. And I think it was created to address trail maintenance at Thomas Hayes and create some sort of communication ability between the society and the city staff regarding, consultation and referrals and that type of thing. But to me, I think that things have likely evolved to the point where it might be better to take a look at that services agreement and look to properly define it with a clear set of scope, a clear set of deliverables, and come up with a much better agreement with the society. And my preference would be to see them get some support from staff as opposed to seeing support at their society table related to elected officials. I think what they need is support from a technical perspective as opposed to a council perspective. Now, there is a role, I think, to play in terms of liaisoning with the society at a high level, from a society level. I think that council has that opportunity to participate in their annual general meeting. And then just as their president, Marge Sidney, presented to council, perhaps that becomes an annual occurrence where we as a council get updated as to what they've done in the previous year, what their plans are for the coming year, or maybe that's a twice a year type of an event. And I also think that there's a role to play within the Parks and Recreation system as well, because really I think the trails fall into that world. And I really think that the society should be better coordinated with Parks and Recreation so that there's a little bit more of the natural continuity of Parks, Recreation, and Trails should all be kind of falling into itself, right? So, or coming together. So my feeling is that we should be directing staff to take a look at this agreement. It doesn't come up for expiry until December 31st of 2025. But perhaps the time is now to take a look at that agreement and look at reformatting that agreement to meet the needs of what we have going on in the city right now. We have the Downtown Cary project, we've got the upcoming rail trail, we have other initiatives, OCP reviews and whatever else. Perhaps we could expand that. We have Thomas Hayes part that we are certainly are a partner on, and the next motion is going to be supporting that. And there might be other projects out there, but I think they're more technical in nature. So in my opinion, I don't know if having a council representative on the society is the best and highest use of council time. But I certainly think there is a role to play between liaison between the two societies at the high level and at the technical level. And that would be my commentary on the matter.
Thank you, Councilor Nietzsche. Councilor Fowler.
That's me. So yeah, I look back to when we had Councillor Britton attending the meetings, and he came back just full of enthusiasm about this group of volunteers and all the work they were doing, and just reporting, just a communication thing. So I understand where you're going if you were being asked technical questions, and of course I don't think that that's their initiative to have a council representative there. I'd like to go back to having Councillor Britton attend the meetings and have those reports come back, because they do so much good in our area, and they are all volunteers, and all they're asking is communication of representatives. So I hope we can sort something out there, and even if it's not somebody that gets appointed, maybe it's somebody who volunteers to go to the meetings and just listen and come back with the information. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And if we don't do something as an appointee from the city, where would we stand with a councillor just attending as an interested person? Because I had been going to the meetings and then I got busy doing a few other things. So yeah, I'd like to see us have somebody there, and even if it's not on an official basis, just having some way to allow a councillor going there without there being any kind of a conflict or reporting system or anything, just to keep us all informed, to show our support. We do give them money, and it's kind of nice to be part of that, I feel. So.
Councilor Weiner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually echo a lot of the comments that Councillor Fowler made. We do support them with financially, and they are a very active group in the community. And I do think even on a voluntary basis, to even quarterly to go and attend the meetings just to get information back, and even to potentially, we see some things evolving through our OCP or our Cary project that might be opportunity for them for their trail master plan, or those opportunities just to communicate back and forth and maybe engage them with staff, as Councillor Nietzsche the saying on a more voluntary basis and less technical basis, I think would be an asset to both the Trail Society and to the city.
Anybody else? Councillor Todd.
I'm a member in good standing of the Armstrong Trail Society. I mean, it's, I could go to a meeting just as a citizen. And I'd be happy to do that. I'm not gonna go to all of them, I don't think, but I could certainly go and come back and give my opinion of what I saw. And if there's questions there, I can direct them to come talk to staff. I certainly wouldn't have the answers for the technical stuff, but just as a citizen, I'm not sure how that sits. If you can do both, if you can be both.
So hearing, and taking Councillor Nietzsche, point, which I think has a lot of validity. And I do think that we're going to have to rewrite our, working relationship, but that doesn't expire for some time right now. And then both Councillor Weiner, Councillor Fowler's position and Councillor Todd wanting to be part of this. If everybody is comfortable and if it works well with the city, I would have no problem allowing Councillor Todd to be that intermediary without a title for the time being until we move forward and figure out what the best path is.
I think, I mean, I'd quite happily help Councillor Todd out in attending those meetings. As long as kind of we're on the same page with the Trail Society as what those expectations are, right? I think like what I'm hearing around this table, I'm comfortable with, but if they're expecting kind of that advisory role as a counselor, then I think we need to rethink that. But if it's just a listening and a liaison, then I think that's perfect.
It's, yeah, from my point of view, it's not a direct conduit to council table. It's just it's an ear and a sympathetic ear perhaps, but at least just an ear.
But that might not be quite the way that the bylaw is reading now, and this is what the issue is that moving forward, I think we have to look at that and to come up with a decision tonight that's positive for everybody. I think the path forward is to allow the two councillors to attend the meetings and be a conduit for information.
Through your worship, so I think an emotion, emotion, a recommendation would be important to have. And I think the recommendation should definitely include that these counselors are acting as liaisons to provide information to council, but not in a technical aspect. So as long as the Trail Society understands that and that's acceptable, then it would just be for council to listen, to refer staff and to bring back information to the rest of the counselors as to what's happening. Which is, yeah.
Getting a 2 thumbs up from an important visitor in our audience tonight, so I'm happy with that. Philippa, I'm sure you have some wonderful words down there that reflect the motion in front of council.
So we'd have that, sorry.
Yep.
Then we'd have that Councillor Todd be appointed as the liaison to the Trail Society and Councillor Drapala be appointed as the alternate. Okay, sorry. And I cut you off. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And that'll be moved by Councillor Fowler, seconder, Councillor Weiner. No further question. All those in favor? This will be carried unanimously. And we'll back up one.
Get back on track. Yeah, apologize for that. I jumped forwards. So the other document was with respect to support for a grant application. And the grant application requirements are outlined in the actual letter, and staff have no issue with council supporting this if they so choose to.
Moved. It will be so moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Todd. Was there any discussion? No. I'll call the vote on the letter of support for the Trails Committee. And all those in favor? Carried unanimously. We also have a report from the Okanagan Basin Water Board and a thank you letter to the City of Armstrong from the Cam Jammers Car Club, thanking us for financial support for their car show coming up. And in conclusion with that, we will move forward to new business, 8.1, Parks and Recreation minutes, March 18th, 2024. Did either of the counselors involved with that one make comment or reference to it?
Yes. Sorry. Your worship, there was a request that comes from the Parks and Recreation minutes related to budget. Let me just find it here, related to one of the capital projects for the Hassan Arena dressing room renovation. So the commission discussed this matter, and it was going to be phased in over 2 years. However, the commission requested that the project be actually completed all at one time, given there's economies of scale and some cost savings there. However, when additional budgeting investigation occurred from the management, it was determined that there was underfunding within the existing capital budget in the amount of $20,172.57. So the recommendation from the commission is that the council authorize a budget amendment for additional funding in the amount of $20,172, and for the city's portion of that would be $10,086.29 for completion of renovations for the 4 showers of the Hassan Arena shower renovation project. So essentially, we're requesting a budget amendment, and so that would come from reserves. So I don't know how we craft that as the motion, Philippa. I think you could probably take the existing motion from the minutes and then add that the funding come from Parks and Recreation reserves. Is that fair? Okay.
Sorry, first of all, can I get a mover on that motion? Councillor Drappa, thank you. Second, Councillor Wayner, and I'm going to steer back to the room to Janine. Do we have room in the budget and to make this work?
Yes, your worship, we have room in the Parks and Recreation Reserve, capital reserve for that.
And also, I just want to, I'm certain moving forward that we've had independent quotes, everything else. This is happening quickly on us, and you're comfortable. Obviously, you've brought the motion forward, so you're comfortable with this decision moving forward, Councilor Nietzsche.
From my understanding, that the project was duly procured following policy.
Great. Any further questions for the Parks and Rec Commission members? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And this will be carried unanimously also.
That was the only issue arising from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you, Councillor Nietzsche, and that report is available to the public if they want any further information. And at this point in time, we would like to move to an in-camera closed session. That I need a mover for the council move to an in-camera pursuant to the Community Charter Section 90-1, subsection E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and also subsection K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal services that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Can I have a mover? Councillor Valstar, seconder, Councillor Todd. All those in favor? And that is passed. I now call this meeting closed.